Hello, I'm Jodie Stewart and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre's Disaster Preparedness Project. How much do you understand about how disasters are managed across the Bega Valley Shire? Would you like to know more about better preparing Eden and surrounding villages for future disasters? Tune in to Prepared for Disaster every Wednesday morning at 11, right here on 2SEA, as I share useful information and chat to good people doing great things in preparedness, recovery and community resilience. Prepared for Disaster. It's all about building stronger, prepared local communities, ready to face more frequent disasters. Hello and welcome to the Prepared for Disaster program, a new program about communities and disasters. I'm your host, Jodie Stewart, and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre. I'll be joining you fortnightly as we undertake a series of conversations about disasters and the role that communities do and can play in response to increasing disaster events. This show is produced and broadcast on the lands of the Thawa people of the Yuin Nation. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all First Nations people joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge First Nations sovereignty of the lands, air and waters, and that this sovereignty was never ceded. This is, was and always will be First Nations land. In this show, we will be discussing disasters and their impact. Some content may be distressing. Please look after yourself while listening. Or if you think this is not for you, you can come back to the broadcast in about an hour's time. The Prepared for Disaster program is part of the Disaster Preparedness Project. The Disaster Preparedness Project is an Eden Community Access Centre initiative. The project is funded through New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, formerly Resilience New South Wales, and is a 2-year funded initiative. The aim of the project is to bring the community together to develop a plan that can provide practical strategies for us to be better prepared for future disaster events, whether that be floods, pandemics or fires. Welcome to Prepared for Disaster Episode 8. We have a great show for you today. I'll be welcoming 2 very special guests into the studio. First up, I have Kiah resident Mick Harewood, who is going to share his story of the 2019-2020 bushfires with us. Later in the show, I'll be chatting with awesome Eden Community Access Centre volunteer Vera Clark. We are celebrating Volunteers Month in the month of May, and Vera will be talking to us about all things volunteering and the vital work that she does at the Access Centre. But first, in the hot seat, we are joined by Kiah resident Mick Harewood, and I'd like to welcome Mick to the studio. Good morning, Mick. Hello. How are you going?
Hello to everyone. I'm going fine.
Fantastic. Now, first up, Mick, when we get guests into the chair, we like to ask you, I know you're going to share with us your story of the 2019-2020 bushfires, but first, I'd like to hear about you. What is the Mick Harewood story? What makes you tick?
Well, coasts are generally very beautiful environments with forests growing right down to the ocean. So, there were push and pull factors which led me to leave Melbourne. The push factors were like air pollution, traffic noise, the high price of real estate. And the pull factors were the better climate on the south coast and the beauty of the natural environment here. I've always wanted to live close to or in a natural environment.
Awesome. Thanks, Mick. Sorry, we had a few microphone issues in the beginning, but you were talking about your privilege to have a wonderful scientific education. So where did you obtain that education, Mick?
I moved around a bit,
Yep.
But I ended up getting a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and Genetics at Monash University after studying for a while in ANU in Canberra. So, at the time, the molecular biology revolution was unfolding, and it really attracted me to biochemistry. And that's led me to a career in hospital laboratories, first at the endocrine unit in St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, and in more recent years in the pathology lab at Bega District Hospital.
Fantastic. What an amazing professional life you have led, Mick. Fantastic. Now, I want to turn to your experience with the 2019-2020 bushfires. So, Mick, you made the decision to stay and defend your home in Kiah during the 2019-2020 bushfires. Why did you make that decision?
Well, the decision to stay and defend was based on knowing how dangerous it would be to try and leave, especially if a fire was approaching. We're sort of surrounded by a sea of regrowth forest. And so getting to the river might have been difficult, and the river, if the tide was out, would have been about, 150 millimetres deep, so not a great place to shelter. And following the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, that was 2009, we had decided to build a bunker. So I knew I would be safe in that bushfire bunker. It's gas tight and well sealed up. So I thought our house it was worth saving. It's 130 years old. It's got beautiful woolly butt floors, and a lot of the timbers in it are irreplaceable now. So we had prepared well, and I knew if things got really desperate, I could survive in the bunker.
Awesome. So can you talk us through a little bit about how you prepared your home, and what was your bushfire preparedness plan prior to the fires?
Okay, we always knew we lived in a very bushfire-prone area, and in 1983 there was the Ash Wednesday fires, but also in East Gippsland the Combine Bar fire, which burnt for about 6 weeks from January on, burned out 150,000 hectares. Luckily, it was stopped at the New South Wales border with a wind change, but it did actually burn out about 6,000 hectares of pines south of Bombala. Anyway, as a result of the Ash Wednesday fires, the CSIRO did a lot of work on how to prepare home to save fires. They found that houses burn down for two main reasons. The first is embers get into the roof space, which is almost always really tinder dry, so anything will catch alight. The second reason is embers build up in drifts, like several inches deep, against any vertical surface. And this can happen for hours before the fire comes. Each live ember in itself is not going to start a fire, but if they build up several centimetres deep, it will eventually set alight to any flammable surface, whether it's a vertical surface or a horizontal surface like a veranda or a deck. So based on that, we took off the bottom two weatherboards on all our walls and replaced them with mud brick. We blocked in the top of the walls with bird scallop so that there was no gap between the top of the wall and the veranda roof. We put metal gutter brackets on the extension as an extension to the veranda rafters, and attached metal brackets to that to support the guttering. So basically there was no chance of debris in the guttering catching alight and setting alight to timbers of the veranda. We replaced flimsy aluminium fly wire screens with stuff called InvisiGuard, which is security grade steel, just on 3 fly screens. They had wooden frames, but I guess most importantly, we wet down the whole lot with a sprinkler system. So once we'd built the verandas around the house, we installed this sprinkler system, which was very cheap polypipe, garden-type sprinkler system using microjet sprayers at about 150 centimetres apart, 1.5 metres apart. and that was enough to wet down all the walls and the decks. We're actually quite lucky in that the fires came through Malakuta and Cobargo on New Year's Eve, 2019-2020. That gave us 4 days to do further preparation and try out the sprinkler system again. And in that time I found out that one of the end flushing valves, I'll come back to that, wasn't working, so I replaced that. And also the sprayers were wetting down the decks but not the wall so well. So I got up on the ladder and rotated the pipes to, well, the sprayers I guess are about 35 degrees angle from the vertical wall. So that gave good coverage of both the walls and the decks. And I'm absolutely certain that's what saved the house.
Right. So you enacted your plan when the fires came through. So can you talk us through that?
Okay. Years ago, the plan was for one of us to stay in the roof of the house and one of us to stay in the studio and defend both buildings, but that all changed with the catastrophic fire behaviour we've had in recent years. The 2003 Canberra fires, they were shocking. As I said before, the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, 2009, that was frightening. And we had a lot of stories out of that. So basically I decided, well, my partner Sue decided to evacuate early, and she evacuated to Eden and then was further evacuated to Merimbula. So that was that. I decided to stay knowing I could stay safely in the bunker. But when I got word the fire was at Wanburn, someone staying with Sue was on the internet and told her that, and she phoned me on the mobile, I think, or maybe the landline was still working then. Anyway, I knew I had about maybe 20 minutes, or I guessed I had about 20 minutes. So I sent a quick email to a few distant relatives and friends, packed up the laptop and put it in the bunker. I got up into the roof space, and we had already had a hose there with a sprayer on it, and I wet down the whole roof space a bit just to increase the humidity. We've got a plasterboard ceiling which can't take too much water, but it was enough to perhaps help any embers that did get in there to help suppress them. And then I turned on the sprinkler system and made sure it was all working properly and everything was getting wetted. And I retreated to the bunker. By that stage, of course, well, it was dark. It had been dark from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This was about 10 o'clock at night. I hovered around the door of the bunker trying to take photos, which was a complete waste of time. They were all just black. The smoke was so thick, you couldn't see a thing. And I foolishly let a whole lot of smoke get into the bunker, which I regretted. But anyway, I got in and closed the door, pushed it all tightly shut so that all the seals were gas tight. And looked out the tiny little window we had. We had this was the most expensive part of the bunker, $3,600 for a window which was about, 40 centimetres by 30 centimetres. 3 layers of ceramic glass set in insulated steel frame. A place called Nilfire in Sydney made it. They said they do a lot of quotes and get very few orders.
Right.
Yeah. People sometimes have big picture windows and they think they can, double glaze them or whatever and protect it from fire. Well, it's just not affordable. What you really need with big windows is shutters, steel shutters. Anyway, that I was in the bunker for probably an hour and a half. So I set about taking some measurements and recording that data. We had a thermometer, a digital thermometer, with a probe inside and outside the bunker, so I recorded the time and temperature. I had a CO2 meter. I had previously purchased a second-hand compressed air cylinder, like a scuba diving type cylinder, which is air compressed to 2,000 atmospheres. And I thought that would be plenty of air for me. Anyway, when I bought that, the guy at the dive shop in Merimbula said, "What are you doing about CO2?" I said, "I haven't thought about CO2. And he said, "In a sealed space, carbon dioxide and water vapour will build up really rapidly." And they did. The CO2 eventually got to 4,450 parts per million, which is really quite dangerous. Over 5,000 parts per million, you can suffer brain damage. So, at that point I got out. But, by then I knew the temperature had dropped outside. So I was observing the fire through that tiny little window. I had left a light on above the kitchen sink so I could see that most of the time, see that the house was still intact, the light was still on. Occasionally the smoke was so thick you couldn't see it. Pretty early on, after the fire front came through, a little brown bird landed on the mesh screen I'd put over the window to try and protect it from debris. And it broke my heart. The little bird flew off. I thought, I can't do anything about this.
No.
Yeah. And then probably about an hour into the fire, the wind, which was blowing everything from the south-southwest, swung around to the northwest. And there was an amazingly hot ember shower from the northwest. It got so hot that quite a lot of radiant heat started coming through the window. And I had previously prepared a little screen of sisolation, shiny aluminium foil on a piece of plywood. I put that up for a while and then I took it away. I wanted to see what was going on. So I was in there for quite a long time. As I said, the CO2 level was getting dangerously high. I had actually set up a bed on a massage table we had in there, thinking I might have to stay the night if the house burnt down. But I wanted to find out what was going on, so I geared up and went out. And that was the dangerous part. I'd had on overalls, a helmet, and P2 canister type respirator, which enabled me to keep working in the heavy smoke. But when I went out, there were trees crashing down every couple of minutes. The power was off at the house, the water was off, and the smoke alarm was screaming. So I turned that off. I went to the power block. We're on standalone solar there, so I turned off the inverter and turned it back on, having turned off the power to the studio. By that stage I realised the studio had burnt down. So if I isolated the power to the studio, the power came on to the house and that was fine. Then I had to do something about the water. So I fought my way up past the studio to the tanks, the concrete and plastic tank that had been supplying the water to the house, through lots of fallen trees that were alight, and making my way through that landscape. I found the plastic tank. It was a 13,500 litre plastic tank that had disintegrated.
Right.
So it had just melted. So I guess somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 litres of water had been put on the house and saved it. So I turned on the concrete tank. The concrete tank had a few cracks in it because of the really high intensity radiant heat, but it was more than half full. I turned it on, went back to the house and found there was no pressure. And what had happened was, even though we'd taken the trouble to isolate each tank with a gate valve and galvanised pipe going underground, little things like a plastic end connector or a plastic nipple had melted underground and leaked. And in one part, a polypipe, 1.5 inch polypipe, buried underground in some rocky ground, had got a hole in it from the fire and was spraying water everywhere. So, yeah, I had about 200 litres of pretty terrible water in a metal tank, and I had a little watering can, and I went around putting out fires on garden fences and walnut dryer and things like that until about, 4 a.m. I went to bed in a really smoky bedroom, and then the fire flared up again from some wattle outside the house, and I had to get up and gear up and put that out. So yeah, it wasn't a great night's sleep, but
No.
but I survived.
You survived, yes. And obviously your scientific background
Yeah.
helped and informed your planning. So when you reflect back on that time, how do you feel about the decisions you made?
I'm really pleased we took the time and effort to research the bunker. We're indebted to a guy named Chris Pullen, who had a blog after the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, and it was about bunkers basically. The CSIRO did some early work on bunkers, or dugouts as they were called back in the day, and found that a lot of people died from carbon monoxide poisoning, because they're usually quite low in the landscape, if not below ground, and carbon monoxide's heavier than air. So bunkers have to be absolutely gas tight. And after the Victorian Building Authority had put out some initial advice saying you need to know when it's safe to exit, and you need to make sure that you can exit. So the design of my bunker is like a public toilet, has a sort of a vestibule area, so that no tree can actually fall on the door and block it. And we had the little window, we had the thermometer with a probe through the wall, and we had a galvanised iron pipe with a gate valve on it low down in the wall, so I could sample the air quality outside. And yeah, the seals were two sorts, one called bat wing seals, which they're quite conventional, and the other one's called an intumescent seal, and that expands with heat. So I was prepared to use a crowbar to get out if I needed to. As it turned out, the temperature outside on the lee side of the bunker, where the thermometer probe was, didn't get higher than 45 degrees, which is, not too bad in a bushfire. I'm sure it got over 1,000 degrees other parts of the landscape. Certainly in the studio, which burnt down, it would have got, enough to melt glass and shatter glass. So I don't know, what's that, over 1,000 degrees?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I was pleased about, having done the work and the preparation. What I was not so pleased about is losing the studio. My partner lost pretty well a lifetime's worth of artwork and a library, a lot of Aboriginal history and contact history. I lost a whole set of environmental impact statements on wood chipping. They just turned into ash. I probably would have never have opened them again, but that's beside the point, isn't it?
That's right.
So I regret not protecting the studio better. I mean, how the fire got into the studio was through a wooden door on the western side with a wooden architrave. So it was almost certain that embers would build up against that surface, set it alight, and the studio burnt basically from the inside. After the fire, we could see this interesting pattern on the roof where all the galvanising was melted and burnt off the galvanised iron roof, where the fire was really hot, but where it was to some degree protected by the framing, it hadn't melted.
Right.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Most of the timber framing burnt, and half of the roof stayed intact because the tech screws held the sheets of iron together.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, in hindsight, what one of my neighbours did, he put wet towels at the base of all his doors and windows and covered them with wet sand, and that saved his house. Admittedly, it was lower down in the landscape and probably had a better chance of surviving than Sue's studio. But yeah, that's something that's worth doing. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, I'm chatting with Mick Harewood, and he's sharing his story of staying and defending his home in Kiah during the 2019-2020 bushfires. Mick's story is a really, really important one. However, if you have any doubts about your ability to cope in the face of threatening bushfire, the Rural Fire Service advises you should plan to leave early, well before a fire reaches your area and well before you are under threat. Leaving early is always your safest option, and we strongly recommend following the RFS's advice at all times. We're going to stop and have a bit of a music interlude, and we're going to hear from Baker Boy, Wish You Were Here. Welcome back. That was Baker Boy and Wish You Well. If you are just joining us, I'm chatting with Mick Harewood, and he was chatting with us about his experiences staying to defend his home in Kiah on January 4th, 2020. Mick's story's been featured on the ABC, and we're thrilled to have him here in the studio sharing it with us. Mick stayed and defended his home on January 4th. If you have any doubts about your ability to cope in the face of threatening bushfire, the Rural Fire Service advises you should plan to leave early, well before a fire reaches your area and well before you are under threat. We strongly advise following the advice of RFS. Now, Mick, before you go, I want to talk to you about the Project Lab. You're one of our Project Lab members. You join us every fortnight, and you're working with a project team on some really exciting projects. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the project you're working on, Mick.
Yeah, I'm trying to encourage people to install cheap sprinkler systems on their house if they feel that would be the best way to defend it. Every house is different, and yeah, basically everyone needs to be able to defend their house against ember attack, sustained ember attack. We know the climate's warming. We know that the bush is going to get drier as it gets hotter, and we can expect even worse fires than 2019, 2020. So, you know, I understand the advice changed after Black Saturday in Victoria from stay and defend a well-prepared house to leave early. The problem with leaving early is you've got a good chance of losing your house. So if you feel up to it, prepare your house with shutters, sprinkler system, everything you can do to prevent ember attack destroying your house, and maybe stay and defend it, or at least have a means of turning on your sprinkler system remotely so that you've got some chance of staying and saving your house. To lose your home is one of the most devastating things that can happen to anyone, and a lot of people are still traumatised from the Tathra fires, let alone the 2019-2020 fires. So I would encourage people to do what they can to defend their home. Bunkers are not for everyone, and you know, we did it because we lived at Kiah and it's surrounded by bush. I don't think it's sensible for people to contemplate bunkers. Maybe in the peri-urban area, in the outskirts of town, certainly sprinkler systems, shutters, that sort of thing should be encouraged. There are some parts of town that are relatively safe, but really, as the climate gets hotter and catastrophic fires get worse, nowhere's safe.
And it's always best to prepare well in advance of these events. Thank you so much, Mick, for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. We've got Vera Clark chatting with us next up. But before then, I'm going to play a song and we're going to hear from the Beatles. And this is a song that Vera has recommended, and we're going to hear about her recommendation when she joins us in the chair shortly. Hello, welcome back. If you are just joining us, you missed our chat with Kiah resident Mick, Harewood, who came along to the show to share his story of the 2019-2020 bushfires with us. Kiah suffered some of the worst losses to property during the bushfires, and Mick generously spoke with us about his decision to stay and defend his home on January 4th, 2020. Mick's personal story is an important one. The Rural Fire Service advises that if you have any doubts about your ability to cope in the face of a threatening bushfire, the Rural Fire Service advises you should plan to leave early, well before a fire reaches your area and well before you are under threat. If you missed this chat with Mick, this episode will be rebroadcast next Wednesday at 11 a.m. But now I am joined by the fabulous Vera Clark. The month of May is Volunteers Month, and we are celebrating our amazing volunteers. Now, according to the 2016 Giving Australia report, 3.6 million Australians are engaged in volunteer work, contributing over 932 million hours. Now, volunteers are the backbone of communities, particularly regional and rural communities like Eden and its surrounding locales. And the Eden Community Access Centre is staffed almost entirely by volunteers who provide a vital service to the community. Vera Clark is one of those volunteers, so thank you so much, Vera, for joining us in the studio today.
Thanks, Jodie. It's good to be here. I'll get your name right.
That's right. No worries at all. Look, it's fabulous to have you here. First, now you requested When I'm 64 from the Beatles.
That's
Can you tell us about that?
Well, it used to be that people would retire at 65, and now obviously the age is, sort of later on, 65, 66, 67. I love the Beatles, and I just thought that was a really good song to demonstrate, hey, there is life after 64 or 65 or 66 or 67.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Vera, we'd like to ask our guests to share their story with us. So what's your story? What's the Vera Clark story?
Oh, okay. Well, as you can probably tell, I was born in the UK, in a place near Liverpool in the UK. I left school at 16. I worked for a company then called the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board, which was right in the middle of Liverpool, which was a very exciting time to be in Liverpool. I then joined the Women's Royal Air Force as a communications officer and met my husband, and then we emigrated to Australia in 1972, and we were the last of what they call the 10-pound poms. We moved around quite a bit, finally coming to Eden about 18 years ago, and that was for a job. I was offered a job with Mission Australia in their employment services, so came to Eden basically sight unseen. We'd been to the South Coast before, but never as far as Eden, so it was a great, it was a great move. We loved the climate, the people, the whole natural environment, and of course living close to the beach.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. So we can thank Australia's immigration policies
That's
and Mission
exactly
Australia
right.
for bringing you here, Vera.
That's exactly right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us, what inspired you to volunteer for the Access Centre?
Okay, long story. Basically, I worked in employment services for over 30 years and I retired from full-time work in 2012. Now, there's only so much travelling, housework, gardening, dusting, that sort of thing that you can do, and I really needed something to keep my mind active. So I was aware of the Access Centre and their role in the community because of my experience in employment services. And I thought that, sort of with the skills I developed in working with people, working on computers, working with admin, I thought that would be a good fit. And so I actually saw an ad for a tax help volunteer And for the Access Centre, that's a volunteer that helps people on low incomes complete their tax returns. So I applied for that, and the rest is history, and I've been there for about 10 years.
What, fantastic. And you are really an invaluable member of the centre as well.
Thank you.
So tell me, what does a typical day at the Access Centre look like for you, Vera?
Okay, there's no such thing as a typical day. Every day is different, and it really does depend who walks through the door and what they're after. So I guess with so many services going digital, we help a lot of people with things like MyGov, Centrelink, Medicare problems, and along with another volunteer, Lois, we run the computer sessions for seniors. We even have some ladies from Uniting Aged Care come in every now and then for help with their computers as well. And we do an outreach service to Malakuta, delivering the computer sessions there. So, but really, it could be anything. It could be typing up a resume, helping with computer phone problems, photocopying, laminating a document or a photo, sending an email. The list's endless. We've also helped people to renew their do things like renew passports, book rail tickets, bus tickets, and even airline tickets. In fact, yesterday in the afternoon, I was booking airline tickets for a lady who's going overseas, and I was also booking train tickets for her for the UK. So that was, it gives you a buzz, you know, when you can help people do that, because not everybody is computer literate. So, yeah. So I've got some special projects as well for the Access Centre. I involved in producing the Eden Connection newsletter, which you might have people might have seen. That's a monthly newsletter, and I also help in updating our Facebook page and website. So, and I thought you might be interested in the fact that in March this year, we had more than 320 people walk through our door.
Wow.
Looking for assistance. Okay, 94 of those are for computer help. So that sort of just shows how you know, this digital age is really, you know, it's you know, it's difficult for some people. And probably an equal number was Centrelink, MyGov type issues as well. So really, the Access Centre's become the go-to place for our community. If we can't help, we'll always do our best to find out, you know, sort of who can help.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're wearing many, many hats.
Yes, definitely.
Tech wizard,
I wouldn't say wizard.
Travel consultant.
I always wanted to be a travel agent when I was about 15, so I'm living the dream.
Absolutely living the dream. And look, you provide an invaluable service to the staff there as well, like myself. We get to sit down and have lunch with you and a chat. There was one of the volunteers the other day who offered to help me out with my knitting because I'm having a terrible time.
That obviously wasn't me.
No, I'm having a terrible time trying to teach myself via YouTube how to cast on. Yeah. So, and look, it's also, I've noticed in my time there, it's a great place for people to come in just to have a chat and a bit of social
exactly
connection.
Right. That's exactly
which
right.
is so valuable.
Yeah.
So, Vera, you were volunteering at the centre during and after the 2019-2020 bushfires. Yes. Can you talk to us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, well, it was a scary time for everybody. Basically, as a family, we were very prepared. We'd been through the 2003 fires in northeast Victoria. Now, our house here is a wooden house located at the top of a gully, so we knew it probably wouldn't survive if the worst came to the worst. So we made the obvious decision to leave. First of all, we went down to the wharf. We were with our neighbours, but the smoke really got too much for us all. So we were evacuated to the Fishers Club. and then eventually evacuated to Merimbula. And that was, I'll never forget that journey. It was an absolute nightmare journey. Yeah. So anyway, we were in Merimbula for a couple of days, came back, and it was a relief to see our house still standing. We knew it was, but it's still a relief. So we did, the usual cleaning all the ash and dirt and muck that, had accumulated. And then myself and another volunteer, I contacted another volunteer who lived close, and we made the decision that we better open the centre because we thought nowhere else was open. So we thought people would need some help. So we were there, just the two of us, for over a week. And we were so busy, we were just inundated with people coming in. So we still had good internet, which was a bonus, really, good communications. We even had the Defence Force come in to use the centre as a communications base for a while until they were, better set up. So we did a bit of everything, really, helping people to claim the various support and grants available through Centrelink and agencies such as Red Cross, to applying for ID documents, because so many people had actually lost their identity documents in the fires. So just a takeaway from that, recommend everybody get some digital copies or even take a photograph on your phone of your ID. So our computer room was packed, and sometimes people just came in to get out of the smoky atmosphere and just wanted to chat and a cuppa. And sort of, we certainly, Lois and I, and then later on the other volunteers that joined us, we were able to really put our accidental counsellor skills into practice during that time. So, and of course, making lots of referrals to support agencies for food, accommodation, etc. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was, people were very grateful, but it gave the volunteers a really good feeling that we were able to, sort of help those people in need.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful work. So, Vera, the Access Centre is almost solely staffed by volunteers. There's one paid employee, which is the manager, Karina Severs. So what motivates you to do what you do?
Okay. I guess, as I said earlier, it helps keep the brain active. I've sort of got to be doing things. So, and I love working with people and meeting new people. So it can be very challenging and very rewarding. But even the little things, like helping someone send an email can give you a bit of a buzz and make you think, hey, I did something good today. So I guess that's what motivates me. Yeah.
Being a change maker and making some positive changes in people's lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you say to someone who's tossing up whether or not to volunteer in the community, Vera?
Okay. I think they sort of have to look at their, what their skills are and what they would like to do. Are they willing to learn? Do they want to meet new people? How much time can they offer? It's all about, it's like a job, a paid job. It's all about the right fit. And obviously there are many, many benefits. So, volunteering gives you a sense of achievement and purpose. It helps you feel part of the community, helps you feel better about yourself by improving your self-esteem and confidence. It's great for learning your new skills, and especially if someone is, we've got a lot of people who've got to retrain, and they're not quite sure what it is, they want to do. So it's great, volunteering can give you an opportunity to learn new skills. And also, it's good on your resume as well. It's good to put that you've been volunteering on your resume. They say I know it does, it helps combat stress, loneliness, social isolation, all those things. So, and there are lots and lots of opportunities in Eden for volunteers, whether it's on a regular basis or as what they call a spontaneous volunteer. And that's where you're volunteering to assist your community without the long-term commitment, because it really depends how much time you want to give, So, yeah. And people can drop into the Access Centre and ask us about either volunteering with us or find out what what's available locally. for volunteers. So, yeah.
Yes, and
But,
find the place
but
that's the right
it's a great thing
fit.
to do, for yourself and for your community.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful thing. So, Vera, I'm interested in hearing your response to a question we've asked of our Resilient Eden workshop participants in November of last year. What does a well-prepared and resilient Eden and surrounds look like to you? What is your vision for a stronger, more resilient Eden and surrounds?
Wow, good question, Jodie.
Big question,
Big question. Yeah. I guess a well-prepared and resilient Eden, I guess it's a community that puts aside any real or perceived differences and works together for the benefit of all. Okay, so it's a community that has a plan, which is really, really important, where everyone knows basically what the drill is in the event of any disaster. And it's also a community where we look after our elderly and infirm and ensure that everyone has a roof over their head. And that's a huge issue, as you're well aware, in our local community. Okay, one lesson that we did learn, or I think I learned from the fires, is that Eden needs a safe place, a community hub or a hall that has the facilities to support people in a disaster, good communication, good reliable communications and power, and the capacity to provide a room for also for other services that come into town to support us as well. So I think that's, that's my vision, if you like.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
The community hub is about bringing people and services together.
So it's a one-stop shop. So, people aren't, going somewhere and saying, oh, you've got to go, down the road here, or you've got to go to Bega. Yeah,
that's right, because research tells us that trauma impacts on people's ability to make those types of decisions.
That's right.
So if it was in the one place, then it would sort of alleviate some of that stress and anxiety.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vera. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a little short break and hear from King Stingray and Down Under One Sun.
Thanks, Jodie.
No, it looks like our song's not going to play. That's okay. Look, thank you for joining us. We've been chatting today with Mick Harewood, Kiah resident, and he came and joined us in the chair to chat with us about his experiences of the 2019-2020 bushfires. We just had a fabulous chat with Vera Clark, one of our wonderful volunteers from the Eden Community Access Centre, because this month of May, it's Volunteer Month. So Vera was chatting to us about all things volunteering and her motivations for volunteering, and her visions for a stronger, more resilient Eden. So I want to thank the fabulous Vera Clark and Mick Harewood for joining us today. So next episode, Wednesday, May 17th, we'll be chatting with some more fabulous local people doing wonderful things in our community. Also, don't forget our Project Lab, a welcoming and inclusive space for community to come together and be supported to develop community projects. Our labs run fortnightly, and our next lab session will be Thursday, May 11th, 5:30pm to 7:30pm at the Eden Library event space. We provide a fantastic dinner, and good company is provided as well. So please do come along. We welcome everyone to come along. It's a great place to socialise. It's a great place if you have any ideas for making Eden and surrounds a stronger, more robust community. Please do come along. So Prepared for Disaster. It's broadcast live every fortnight and repeated the following week. So tune in next Wednesday for a repeat of this episode at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for joining me. Until we chat again, be well and stay connected.